Talk about the debates and the 2020 hopefuls and a few other related issues with Dr. William Rosenberg, professor of political science at Drexel University. He is co-author, by the way, sometime back of News Verdict's The Debates in Presidential Campaigns, among other things. He is tweeting at Dr. B. Rosenberg. Bill, welcome. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Debates are very different now from what they used to be, and we have these huge contingents, as we saw in 2016, of Republican candidates. Now the Democrats are facing that. How are they dealing with this, do you think?
Well, what I think we first have to recognize is that there's actually two periods of debates. There are the primary debates, and then there are the general election debates. And over time, these have both changed dramatically. The first presidential debates that were televised took place in 1960, the famous Kennedy-Nixon debates. But the election debates that happened post-convention have typically been three presidential debates and one vice presidential debate, which are really face-to-face between the two candidates and a member of the media. And they're often credited with giving the public the final look into who the candidates are. But what I think is really important today are the primary debates, and we lump them all together. There are actually a whole series of types from actual debates where they go against each other to forums to town hall meetings. But whatever they are, they're an opportunity for the public to see candidates running for president that they haven't seen before. And one of the things I think most voters don't really recognize at this point is that the first debate is only about 3 months away. June of 2019 is when the first presidential debate is going to take place in this election season.
So the Democrats have tried to figure out how to deal with a big field, as we've just discussed. And the challenge is they've come up with this formula, which has to do with fundraising as well as where you are in the votes. They're not going to have, they call, a first and second tier. They will have successive nights so that you will get prime time in each. But on the other hand, you don't know who's going to be in one and going to be in the other. I'm not sure if there's a best way to handle this, but
no,
I think go ahead.
I think the reality is that the party really doesn't know. The party is trying to grapple with a number of different what I might consider conflicting sort of challenges. The Republicans had a real debacle in 2016 where they had about 15 candidates and couldn't find a stage big enough nor enough weeks to be able to hold the discussion. So what they did was they made what was called the cocktail debate, which went on around 7 o'clock, and then they had the evening debate that took place about an hour and a half or 2 hours later. The people that were in the cocktail debate were the ones that didn't quite make the grade of being the top-tier candidates. And as a result, it really set the stage for who got to eventually surface as time went on as the top-tier Republican candidates. This time, with about the same number of candidates, the Democratic Party has some real challenges because no one wants to be in an auxiliary debate. So the Democratic Party has come up with this idea that they're going to have two debates on two different nights and almost a randomized process of who gets into which debates. And the threshold to get into debates is much lower. I think the number is something like 1% in the recent public opinion polls, which basically opens the door to almost anyone who is running for president to be able to make the grade. In the past, the number's been about 5% in 3 consecutive polls. So the number is designed to make it less exclusionary, but at the same time, the public has to be able to have a reasonable amount of choices to be able to discern who is who and who's important and who's not and what are the issue positions. And this is what the party is really dealing with in terms of a challenge.
Yeah, and they don't know who's going to sit in the middle, which is always the key. The territory you want to be in. The real estate is very important.
Absolutely.
Dr. William Rosenberg with us. I wanted to ask about this idea of whether or not there should or should not be debates on Fox, and just the sense that these are media events as opposed to news events, in that each network or whatever broadcast entity is handling the debate has an exclusive right to broadcast it. So I guess the question is this a matter of figuring out who's on the team? Does this serve or not serve the Democratic voters, the primary voters, or the public at large? What's your take on this?
Well, I think I'm of a mixed mind here. Fox News has taken a very clear perspective about being a partisan arm for the Republican Party, while not everyone at Fox does that. So I can understand the hesitancy of the Democratic Party and several Democrats wanting to go on a channel that acts to repudiate every act that they do. On the other hand, in a free and open society, you want to be able to have coverage, and all journalists should be able to have that opportunity. At the same time, we also have this sort of show activity that's going on with regards to the debates. And in the past, the debates used to be primarily hosted by a major newspaper like the Washington Post or the New York Times, and a television network like ABC, CBS, or NBC. What's happened now is that the terms of who gets to host a debate have changed dramatically. We have debates by CNN, Move On, MSNBC, and a lot of the debates are also held still by the CBS and ABCs of the world. But they're partnering now with groups like Facebook or Twitter or other sort of new wave type organizations, which I largely see as opportunities for self-promotion to make the parties seem more hip, and at the same time to have the media organizations look like they're players. And I think it takes away a little bit from, I guess, the long perspective of major journalists sort of conducting these debates and making them more media events rather than actual debates where candidates compete on the basis of ideas. They challenge each other. That just isn't going to be able to happen even in the reduced-sized Democratic debates in 2020.
Can you even have a debate with 10 people on stage? Do you ask the same question and then go down the line, and then the person who's 10th gets a chance to know what other people are thinking and come up with their own answer? I mean, how do you do that?
The simple answer is no, they're not really debates. If we go back into the debate history, the most famous debates probably from a historical standpoint besides Nixon-Kennedy were the Lincoln-Douglas debates, and those took place in the 1860s, and those basically were two men that got on soapboxes in various parks and locations and just went at each other for a really long time. The media covered the events, but it depended upon which newspaper you read determined who won the debate. There was the Lincoln papers and the Douglas papers, and they didn't agree on anything. So today, as you said, if you ask the same question to 10 people, no one's going to want to watch it. But if each candidate gets a different question, you also run the risk of some questions are more controversial. Who gets which questions are going to be really the sticking point. So there's probably not really a great way to do this. A few years back, I guess it was in the 1970s, more than a few years back, they used to refer to the presidential election as a marathon. Well, these candidates all running in 2020 are running a marathon, but the field of the marathon, the number of runners has gotten enormous. And it's really a challenge for voters to try and figure out who they want to get behind, who they want to support, and for political activists and party people, who they want to work for and who they want to promote to get to the White House.
Dr. William Rosenberg, thanks so much for being here this morning. Thanks, Bill.
Have a great day.
Dr. William Rosenberg, professor of political science at Drexel University, tweeting at Dr. B. Rosenberg, Rosenberg. He is also the writer of News Verdicts, The Debates in Presidential Campaigns.